Welcome everybody. My name is Lisa Kidger and I am e-learning manager at CILEX Law School. I'm just going to start off by introducing myself. E-learning manager might not mean much to you. Basically, I am both an academic and a learning technologist. So as a learning technologist, I'm in charge of our virtual learning environment, which includes the building of courses and our various e-learning types of software that we have, such as Articulate 360 and our webinar software. I'm also an academic though, so I teach and I write about law, particularly in the areas of employment law and legal skills. I have been at CILEX Law School for 15 years now. It's been the bulk of my career with academia, and I am evangelical about it. But I realise that you may not know what CILEX or CILEX Law School is. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start off by explaining a little bit about CILEX, and then I'm going to be sharing with you the development of our Foundation Professional and Legal Skills course and the innovations that we have with this new course. So CILEX. CILEX stands for Chartered Institute of Legal Executives, and we are basically another arm of the legal profession. If you think about lawyers in any depth, you probably think about solicitors and barristers, but we also have CILEX lawyers as well. And they basically specialise in a particular area of law. So whereas solicitors are generalists in their studies from the beginning, so they do a law degree, which is general, and they do their LPC, although it's changing now, which again is general, and then eventually they will specialise. With our learners, they specialise right from the beginning. Now, CILEX has around 17,000 members at various different stages. And CILEX Law School is the training arm of CILEX, and they were set up in 1983 as a correspondence course. And so when I very first started at CILEX Law School, there were still some assignments, would you believe it, that were being sent by post. But over the years, I've been involved in the introduction of our virtual learning environments, the change of our virtual learning environments, and the submission of online courses. So we have evolved since then. Now, CILEX is very much about accessible legal education. Many of our learners come from unrepresented backgrounds within the legal profession. And so we have a range of different learners within the law school. Very often they are working while they are studying. They may have family commitments, which may be childcare or other commitments that they have. So they kind of having to cram their studies into other aspects of their lives. So that's an introduction to CILEX and the law school. In 2021, we had the CILEX Professional Qualification CPQ, which was launched. It was to replace our existing qualifications on level 3 and level 6. So basically, we have various different entry points onto the CILEX professional qualification. So we have entry points for graduates, we have entry points for postgraduates as well. But the standard approach is that they would do foundation, advanced, and then professional stage. And alongside their academic studies, they will take assessments in ethics. They also have a portfolio to complete that gets signed off by their employer, very similar to kind of brought into mind what David was talking about earlier about getting the employers involved in that assessment. So the employers have an involvement in the assessment of the learners by signing off their professional experience portfolio. And then at the very end, at the professional stage, a submission is made to the CILEX regulation, and then they are hopefully admitted as a CILEX lawyer. So with this new qualification came the ability for CILEX Law School to rethink how we deliver our courses. We are purely distance learning, and previously our course pages, they had focused on a series of study exercises that the learners submitted. There were some additional bits, look at MCQs and some recordings, but it was mainly focused on the study exercises. But this was an opportunity for us to kind of rethink how we would deliver our courses. So how do you build a successful online course? Because it is quite different from face-to-face teaching. places where people get unstuck is when they attempt to take a face-to-face course and turn it into an online course. And people might have experienced that during the various lockdowns. I was quite lucky in that we were always distance learning, so we didn't have to completely transform ourselves during the COVID period. But we did have the challenge of trying to launch a new qualification during the COVID period. And so when we think about our online distance learning courses, one of the first things that we start off with is an initial scoping, thinking about what it is that we are trying to achieve for our learners, not only in terms of their assessment, because we want them to be successful in their assessment, but also in terms of what do they learn, what do they gain from this. With CILEX, with CPQ, what we wanted to make sure was that we were training the lawyers of the future, going beyond just passing those exams and getting their qualification, making sure that we had the work-ready lawyers of the future. So lots of initial thought went on and pedagogical research into how we would deliver our course. That then leads to the development of a specification from the course. With online, with face-to-face teaching, you can sometimes get away with building as you go. Because you have them on a weekly basis in front of you and they don't know, they may have an outline of what they're going to be covered, but you can bring things to them as time goes on. Very much with online courses, they can see pretty much all of it from the moment that they are on that course page. And they get very confused if you start throwing things in that they weren't expected. So with online distance learning courses, it is really important that we start off with a plan of how we are going to be covering that course, so that we can signpost our learners to what they're going to get, and also it keeps us on track with what we're doing. Having done that, we then have our subject matter expert, our SME engagement. Now, we at the law school, we have a number of academics in-house, but we are fairly small, and so we do often have to engage outside SMEs, particularly for areas where we want to focus on practice. So getting recent practice experience can be really important for us. So we use that specification to talk to that SME about what we are hoping to achieve from this course, what we are hoping for them to create for us. And that's a kind of an iterative process in that they start creating things, we start giving feedback to them, we start developing it, and then eventually we have a course that is built and ready to go live for our learners. So to talk about how we built this particular course. So foundation and professional legal skills is one of the foundation, the lower levels. Now, the CPQ doesn't particularly equate to levels, but roughly you're looking at about level 3, level 4 for foundation, level 4, level 5 for advanced, and then level 5, level 6-ish for the professional stage. So this is right at the beginning of the studies for the learners. They could be working in practice, so they may have a little bit of experience of this, but it might be their first foray into law. They want to dip their toe into the water to see whether it's something that suits them. Professional and legal skills is made up of 2 assessments. So they have legal research and they have succeeding in a legal environment. Legal research is different to traditional academic research. It very much focuses on having a client scenario and having to look at legislation and case law, and to be able to understand how that affects the law and how it applies to your client. Legislators and judges do not always write things in the most easy to read manner. I was delivering a webinar at lunchtime today on interpreting legislation, an hour session where I was just touching on different techniques on how to interpret legislation. So it's a difficult skill to master. On the other hand, we have succeeding in a legal environment, and that encompasses traditional client care aspects, such as correspondence with your client, interviewing techniques, and writing file notes, so the sorts of documentation that you'll create in the workplace. But also on this particular course, it also incorporates what it means to be a lawyer in the workplace. What are those particular skills that you are going to need? In order to develop this course, I was working with a colleague, Cindy Amelia, who worked in practice. So I am primarily an academic, but my colleague, Cindy, had worked in practice, and she had also gone through that CILEX route. So she understood what it was like to be a CILEX lawyer. And so we brought together this course, and we decided to site it within a simulated law firm that we have called Change Legal Solutions. Now, in terms of the pedagogy of this, we were really interested in clinical legal education. So clinical legal education is a way of getting real life experience for students. It's done in a couple of universities where the learners are given access to real clients who are getting free legal advice. The law students are obviously supervised, and everything that they do is scrutinised, and then they are able to experience what it's like giving legal advice to clients. Just as lockdown was starting, just before lockdown, I had the good fortune to go and visit London South Bank University, LSBU. And I saw their law clinic process and heard all about the excellent things that they were doing within that university. And it really inspired us. Their learners tend to have a similar background to our learners, and it's a way to give learners that kind of like that little bit of edge when they're in that job interview that they have experience of what it's like working with clients and how to give legal advice. They used real clients. We're an online distance learning course, so it's a bit of a challenge to think about how we would deliver that. And so that was one of my key challenges, is how could I deliver a law clinic with an online distance learning course. I also had some other challenges. Within CILEX Law School, we don't have cohorts for most of our programs. So because we are so flexible and people are trying to fit it into their busy working lives, they can enroll at any point during the year. So what this means for me is that I can have 2 learners working on a course this month who are at completely different points in the journey. So I had to find a way of kind of making it make sense for whatever point they were at. Because of this, and because it's entirely online, the learners don't really know each other. We're doing our best to foster community, and we've got some kind of initiatives that we're going to be trying to help bring that community. But they don't really know each other. They haven't sat down in the classroom and said hi to each other and know people in passing to be put into groups. So it's a little bit scary for them. It's also not compulsory. Very few things within the law school are compulsory, and they could choose not to complete it. So as well as building the law clinics into the programme, I had to build in an alternative route as well, so that those that couldn't or didn't want to take part in the law clinic still got the best experience that they could. And finally, it is not directly part of the assessment, and probably with any learners, but also with distance learners who are trying to kind of fit things into busy working lives. If it's not directly part of the assessment, they may not be so keen on completing it. But we knew how the benefits that this would have for them within the workplace. So we had to kind of build it in a way that drew them in and made them want to take part in these law clinics. It obviously helps with their assessment. I wouldn't build it if it didn't do that, but it also has some additional benefits. And when I say it's not directly part of the assessment, what I mean is that they don't go into the assessment and do a law clinic, but many of the skills that they learned are assessed within that assessment. So how do you draw them in? We've talked earlier in the sessions about telling stories, and there's lots of academic research into the benefits of telling stories. They tend to focus on learning artifacts, but you can also tell a story with a course, and that's what we did here. So we have our simulated law firm. We couldn't, unfortunately, deliver with live clients, but we decided to kind of simulate the process as far as possible. So we have Change Legal Solutions. And at the beginning of the course, learners complete an e-learning package where they're introduced to Change Legal Solutions, like when they have started work within a law firm and you're doing your induction. So they're told that this is an induction and they're going to be learning lots of skills and that they're going to be taking part in various different initiatives. So they start off with those induction style activities where we're developing skills such as team working, emotional intelligence. We're also looking at professional standards such as the CILEX Code of Conduct, because they'll be required to adhere to that in practice, as well as if they're working in a law firm that has solicitors, there's also the SRA Code of Practice, and also an introduction to legal research. Having had their first few weeks of their induction, they're then brought into a project. Legal tech is huge within law at the moment, so we wanted to bring an aspect into them. So they're given a activity where they're told that they are being part of a project to look into a CRM system for the law firm. So they get some kind of experience and they're taught how to deliver online presentations as part of this. So we're developing their legal skills and their technical skills as well. We then get to a situation where they're asked to be taking part in a law clinic. The Change Legal Solutions has a pro bono facility and they're given some information in relation to a client who needs some assistance, and they're going to go into that law clinic to interview that client. Following the interview, they create a file note like they would do in practice and that they need to do for their assessment. They then do the research like they would do in practice for that particular client. And then finally, like they would in practice, they draft some legal advice for that particular client. And then we get on to our revision ahead of their assessment. So it's designed to kind of give them a journey that they could follow throughout this course. When you're building a course like this, you need to use the right tools. I'm very much that it is not about the tool. It's not about this new tool that we really want to use. It's about what is it that we need them to learn? And then you think about the tools that you have available in order to suit that need. So we use a variety of different tools. You may be familiar with Articulate 360. It's used in a number of e-learning packages. So we use Storyline. Storyline is one of the packages within Articulate 360, which allows for quite a rich interactive experience, but you can't have lots of text. You can have audio and things, but it doesn't lend itself well to lots of text. So we use that to build a corporate style introduction to the induction program, like they might have in-house in a law firm. We used Vimeo to deliver a number of streamed recordings that were focusing on the skills that they would need in the workplace as well as for the assessment. So, for example, how to develop and maintain good client relationships. We used Articulate Rise. Now, Rise is good for where you've got lots of text. It allows you to have some interactive features such as recordings and some multiple choice questions. You have to be a little bit careful with Rise because it's not quite as accessible as Storyline, but we build with that in mind. And that allowed us to give some targeted activities such as our Change Legal Insights project, which is where they were looking at that legal tech. We used the VLE quiz to give them some scenario-based questions that gave instant checking of their knowledge following their reading and activities. We used forums to allow them to reflect. They're introduced for a reflection journal at the beginning, and they're prompted to reflect and share ideas on the forum throughout the course for both their online presentation and just general collaboration. And then when we get to the law clinics themselves, we use Microsoft Forms to share their availability for webinars. They can use Seminar to book some of our interactive webinars, which is a booking system that we have within Totara, and we use Zoom for delivering our recordings. So this meld of tools is what created our course that allowed us to, as far as possible, replicate what life is like within a law firm. So I'm getting towards the end now, don't worry. So in terms of how do we deliver the law clinics? So we start off by asking them to indicate interest. So remember, I don't have any two learners at exactly the same stage because they can enroll at any point during the year. So I ask them to tell me, are they interested in doing a law clinic? I then use the numbers to then create the number of webinars and the periods for the webinars. And I provide that to them and get them to complete a webinar availability form using Microsoft Forms. They then get allocated into their groups and they come to an interview strategy webinar. There's a little bit of talking in that, but the vast majority of it is putting them into groups and getting them to talk to each other. It's a fantastic experience for them to get to know others on the course and also kind of share what they do in practice. They work together to look at their client and develop an interview strategy plan. So they spend most of that session working on their interview plan, which they then upload and they get feedback from the tutor. That then feeds into the law clinic itself, where they come in and they interview their client. I say client, it is one of the law tutors who starts off by kind of welcoming them, and then we all get into character. We deliver the law clinic, roughly about half an hour, and then some feedback is given at the end. I have to say, doing the law clinics is one of my absolute favourite things to do. It is so much fun and they get so much out of it. And then finally, they are invited to an evaluation webinar where we talk about kind of how we felt it went, what we learned from it. And we also talk about this file note that they're going to be creating to record everything, because within legal practice, you make sure that you record everything because otherwise your client can come back to you and say, well, you didn't do a very good job for me here. What you want is a good file note that specifies the advice that you gave. So just to finish up, really, we have not had, it's fairly new, this course, and we've not had that many exam sessions. The exam results came out this week for the June exam session. They get published by the awarding body because we don't set the assessments themselves. Out of the results, we got fabulous results for this. 50% of those that sat the exam had also taken part in the law clinic. Every one of those that had taken part in the law clinic had passed their exam, and also the highest grade on the course had also taken part in the law clinic. Obviously, further analysis is required to see kind of what the impact is of that, but that's very heartening at the moment. But regardless of exam results, the thing that I love the most is one of these bits of feedback that we got from our recent student survey. And they said that they really enjoyed it. It was good to experience and act out the initial client interview because it wasn't something they'd get to do in their current role. And it helped them see that what they could, what a paralegal does. And so that task will be less daunting when they make the move to a law firm. And for me, that's what it's all about. We're not just making sure that they pass their assessments, which is obviously important, but we're making sure that they are ready for the workplace and that they feel confident that law is for them and something that they can do.